So after Isaiah has his vision, God asks him, "Who will be my messenger?" And Isaiah answers, "I will go. Send me." Whoever said that was right. Paul wants us to live not as our human nature wants us to live, but to live by the Spirit. And Jesus says those words that many of us know by heart, John 3:16. Again, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that everyone who believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." So first we hear from God, who asks, "Whom shall I send?" Then we are advised to live by the Spirit that points us to doing good. And then Jesus tells us why he came. So when we speak of God, we think of the three ways that he has revealed himself to us and to the world. Today the lessons make that clear. So we call it Trinity Sunday. God in three persons, blessed Trinity, says the song, "Holy, holy, holy." God in three persons, blessed Trinity. So first we hear Isaiah's answer when God calls. And his answer is, "I will go, send me." Janet is better at knowing when it's God who wants me to do something. She's better at knowing that than I am. When Bob Chappell was dying, we were on our boat in Elk Rapids, and the family called, and I said to whoever it was on the other end, "I will see him in the morning." "Who was that?" Janet says. I said, "Bob Chappell is dying. I told him I'd see him in the morning." "Let's go now," Janet said. I said, "Tomorrow." She said, "No, now." So we buttoned up the boat, got over to the house, and were told that he had not been responsive for most of the day. He was dying. I stood next to the bed and said, "Bob, it's Pastor Blake." And I brought Janet. He started to blink his eyes, sat up as little that he could, and said, "Hi." And we had a conversation. And after the short conversation, we said a prayer, and I left, and he died shortly after. "I will go, send me," is what I should have said. And I was prompted by Janet. Now, I've had many voices asking me to respond. And not always do I go. Not always do I say yes. But when I do go, and I know I'm going because whatever I've been asked to do is right up God's alley, "Here am I say, send me." Now, what happens to us older people is that we get tired and we feel that we've paid our dues, and it's time for someone else to step up to the places that we have held. We think we're old now, and so it's someone else's job to answer God's call, as if age gets us off the hook. Well, it doesn't. Because as my friend Leon Oppel used to say to people, that God continues to ask, what have you done for me lately? Certainly, we're not as fast as we used to be, or strong or as able as we used to be. But the call to reflect God's love can just be as simple as having a good attitude. It can be as simple as being a person who is fun to be around. We are never too old to model pleasantness or concern for the poor, or how to take insults without getting all whacked out of joint. Maybe it would be good to ask ourselves now and then, what have we done for God lately? And to answer his call, to be ready to say, I'll go, send me. God does not give up on us when we fail, nor does he ever stop calling us to engage our better angels. So, secondly, it takes a heavy dose of God's Spirit to not live as the world wants us to. Now, there are all kinds of ways to talk about human nature, but I've just picked out two. The tendency to be selfish, and the tendency to care too much about what other people think. Our culture seems to reward selfishness, looking out for number one. Those who get ahead by just about any means are held up as symbols of success and role models. Selfishness in families is the root of much of people's discontent. Every once in a while, somebody needs to say to a family member, it's not all about you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There are other people here too. I didn't hear that, but it sounded good. You're being called out. Well, there are other people here too. It's human nature to look out for oneself. It's with the Spirit's help that we look out for others as well. You know, some parts of human nature are just flat ugly. Get your way by any means necessary. Say what you say what you want to say, no matter who it hurts. And I'll tell you something about words. Once you've said something to someone, those words cannot be unsaid. They cannot be unsaid. So, whatever you want, no matter who it hurts, is a human nature aspect that we can be done with. I read something this week that just really bugs me. And when I get done with this part of the sermon, I hope it bugs you too. Remember way back in 1865 when the black people were emancipated as slaves? And we bless Abraham Lincoln for that action. 100 years later, all the way up to 1965, they were still being asked to go to different restaurants, drink from different water fountains, to ride in the back of the bus. And then in 1965, we passed the Civil Rights Law, where black people could be and be served the same places white people could be and be served. And now 50 years after that civil rights bill was passed, I read that a black family moves into a town a mostly white town in Long Island, New York. And they receive an anonymous letter that tells them, you don't belong here. This neighborhood is not for you. kind of thing makes me want to cry. It just hurts so bad that people would follow that part of human nature. That's a selfish, ugly part of human nature that the Spirit wants us to be done with. Then it's living in fear of what other people think. That one quirk of human behavior causes so many to be enslaved by the phrase, "What will people think?" What will people think? For a lot of people, going out of your way for somebody else is foolish. I've been called a do-gooder with a snarly look on someone's face. I've been called naive. We get ridiculed for helping. Janet's got some nasty remarks for going to work camp. Why would you do that for those people? Extending ourselves for the sake of others, not caring what other people think, is the call to us. So Paul wants us to live not as our human nature wants us to, but to live more by the direction of God's Spirit to do good. Do Jesus and his John 3:16. Man, do a lot of people love this verse just like Janet said they do. One more time. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Woo-hoo! We believe in Jesus and we get to go to heaven. And some people stop right there. And not only do they stop right there, but they begin to find fault with those who do not see it their way. That's another part of the human nature that we need to reject. Criticizing, belittling, tearing people down is not part of our mission. Listen to the next words Jesus says. The very next phrase. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world. Did you hear that? God did not send Jesus into the world to condemn the world, or to be its judge, but to be its Savior. So Paul and Jesus are together here. We do our faith. We live our faith by living in such a way that people see something good about us in the way that we live our lives. That's the way you practice your faith. To live in such a way that people see something that's good about the way we live. Paying no attention to the critics, trying not to be selfish, and looking out for those that nobody else seems to be caring about. So John 3:16 is really a nice verse. It's comforting. But the words later, John 3:17, is more of the way we ought to see our task in the world. Not judging, not condemning, but reflecting a way of life that is good. Somebody told me that ethics, you're practicing marvelous ethics if you live in such a way that if everybody lived that way, the world would be a better place. So God calls Isaiah, and Isaiah says, I'll go, send me. Paul says, live more by the Spirit that points you to good than by your human nature. And Jesus says, condemn? Criticize? Not so much. Live in such a way you give off hope. So God asks us, who shall I send to do that? And you say,
Send me.
What'd you say?
Send me.
He'll take that.